Rajumba yanda ban zobe sanje riba dan jazo demba dewar sheba jiden chemba chebo doe kalo juwa lana meba lada menan je tumba sanje chumden shaja tu bala chazelo chudo chazo chu Dijin sheba rajumba yanda ba zobe sanje riba dan jazo demba dewar sheba jiden chemba chebo doe kalo juwa lana meba lada menan je tumba sanje chumden den pejawa shaja tu chudo chazo chu Dijin sheba rajumba yanda ba zobe sanje riba dan jazo demba dewar sheba jiden chemba chebo doe kalo juwa lana meba lada menan je tumba sanje Pejawa shaja tu bala chaze lo chudo chazo chu Tso chudan ze sachen de la gomba dumbo ne ngane jiden dena choji zon deze keba chela cha tselo nanda konga chodo zozan Ishe jazo seje lumbo da draba jiden sona lamewa gombo chonye chela cha tselo tsenjo demba trime dawe shi sedo dawa chela cha tselo duje choda siba sumach nyame chinjen chela cha tselo gombo doje che demba tamje chembe tumba bu Jazo jen dijin shela cha tselo dabe de cha drawa ju gewe nizon le dro jen chido dendam cho jorba shi jor chela cha tselo drone roe layan laba dala radone jenge damba yundende ginde layan cha tselo sonje tsola cha choba chela cha tselo gindun chela cha tselo son la tadu kuja tsa chaja uba tamje Shinde kunje chanye che lude paye namgwendu chodo debe cha tselo kamara re marmet Juma sewa chubu dan melan lo dan trenda bu duje chunam de darta sonam deye tamje zigba Goban domne chunje radwe de gada nada chive la chube sibe tsole roa dewa shu Page number 13, the Heart Sutra. Sumla cha tselo dige dage tuba tuje na chumden den jabe ka jagwe pumbo re la gelong ge genden chenpo dan chanjo zembe genden chenpo dan taji dojo de ze chumden shejawe chuje namran ji tenyen zen la nyombar shozo yande ze chanjo zemba semba chenpo paba chere ze wancho shera je paro do chenpa zame cheba nila nambar tashin pumbo ngabo tet Ranshin je tomba nambar tao dene sonje je tu tseda denba share bu chanju semba chimbo pakba chere ze wanchu la dige je mes konla la shera je paro do chimba zame choba chebar deba de jidar la barja dige je meba da chanju semba chimbo pakba chere ze wanchu ge tseda Share tade bula dige je meso share po rije puam rije pomo konla la shera je paro do chimba zame cheba chebar deba tawar chade pumbo ngabo teda charan shinji tomba namba yanda ba jesu tao zo tomba o tomba ni zo 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 le chan tomba ni jemai tomba ni le chan zo jemai no Dujedan nambar sheba nam tomba o share bote dar chetam je tomba ni de tsenye meba majeba magaba trima meba trima dan jawa triwa gawa meba o share bote dawe na tomba ni la zo me tsoa me duje nam Mingme, nawame, name, cheme, lume, yime, zome, drame, time, rome, rechame, cheme, do, mege, kamme, bane, ije, kamme, ije, nambar, shebe, kamje, padoya, medo, marekba, zeba, me, bane, Geshe, zebe, padoya, medo, dejindo, dunga, wada, kunjo, wada, gugba, lame, ishe, me, toba, me, matopaya, medo, sharebo, teda, wena, chanjo, semban, Cher sheraji parodo chimbala tenjine de zemla driba mebe traba medo chinje lole shindo dene nyanyele debe tar chindo tuzumdo nambar shube sonje damje jan sheraji Tenela name bayanda bazo be chanju dungon barzo bason jeso de dawe na shera je paro do chimbe nga riba chimbe nga lana mebe nga minyamba da nyambe nga shiwar jibe nga meba je paro do chimbe meba yata gade gade para sam gade bode soha Simba chimbe didar shera ji paro do chimba zamola la bachao dene tenyen zendele shende chanju simba chimbo paba chereze wanchula chine leso rije bote deshino rije bote deshinde jidar cheje tembar shindo shera ji paro do chimba zamola chebar chade deshin sheba nanjan jizo yirangu chumdende ji dige che ka tsene tseda Buddha chanju simba chimbu paba chereze wanchu da tamje da debe kor da lada me da lama ye da tisar jebe jide irandi chumden dinje somba la ngombar do gade para sam gade bode soha kai damba chimbe top jeme dembe chodam je che doba juje Shiwa ju je gere donra ja ju shiwa ta mide nebe chendan tewa ta tumba doje pezon sojo be tashi de jan dender de le shu Chenan zoje chonan la chanjo bado dani chazo che dage jinso jebe tsonan je dola penjen sonje do ba shu Chedan zoje chonan la chanjo bado dani chazo che dage jinso jebe tsonan je dola penjen sonje do ba shu Chedan zoje chonan la chanjo bado dani chazo che dage jinso jebe tsonam je dola penjen sonje do ba shu So, we were discussing the precepts of mind training, and out of the 21 precepts, we covered the first three, and today we arrive at the fourth, and the instruction reads, whichever of the two occurs, be patient. So herein, when it says whichever of the two occurs, two herein refers to our experiences of joy and experiences of suffering. So, because we need to be mindful of the experiences of joy and suffering in our lives, because it is not all the time that we are able to dedicate ourselves to our spiritual practice, and in moments of distractions, it might be the case that we begin to experience suffering, and as such, our sense of suffering sometimes becomes unbearable, that we have such an intense reaction to it. And then similarly, when we begin to experience joy, then we begin taken away with it. So as such, we become totally distracted, and this kind of experience gives rise to further afflictions. So when it says whichever of the two occurs, whichever of the two occurs, be patient. So how exactly should we cultivate forbearance in the face of joy as well as suffering? So in the experience of suffering, it is indeed the case that we sometimes develop the attitude, why is it only happening to me? And as such, our experience of that suffering becomes all the more pronounced. So as such, in these moments, it is important to reflect on the fact that in samsara, there is no one who is free from suffering, and that the experience of suffering is not only unique to you. And on the basis of that reflection, to be able to remember the aspiration to take on all the sufferings, all the negative karma of all sentient beings to ripen in you at that moment. So then, similarly, in our experiences of joy in the form of prosperity, comfort, and so forth, then we become taken away, and as such, we become mindless in the manner in which we take part in these experiences. So as such, it is always important, as we discussed before, to guard the mind with mindfulness and vigilance. Then moving on, the fifth instruction out of the 21 precepts reads, keep the two even at your life's expense. So now when the instruction says keep the two even at your life's expense, these two refer to in the process of cultivating a spiritual practice, the ethical restraint one develops to abandon negative actions and afflictions, and in its place you accumulate as much merit as possible by engaging in virtuous activities. So herein, simply put, keep the two refers to what to abandon and what to cultivate. What to abandon, what to cultivate, or what to accumulate. So in all our walks of life, it is important to guard this, to know what to abandon, to know what not to give into, and to know what to accumulate and what to cultivate. Then, moving on, the instruction reads, train in the three difficulties. Then these three difficulties are First, the afflictions. So these three difficulties refers to the manner in which we struggle with afflictions. So the first is the difficulty in recognizing afflictions when they do arise within ourselves, failing to recognize the afflictions when they arise within ourselves, failing to appreciate the fact that when the afflictions consume our mental state and define our mental state, then suffering ensues as a result. So this, I think all of us can appreciate from our own lived experiences, wherein when these afflictions do arise within ourselves, even if we are able to identify them, but we think that when these afflictions influence our action, that it is justified. We look at anger, attachment as a form of as forms of reactions that are justified. So as such, we fail to appreciate the negative consequences of these afflictions when they do arise within our mind stream. Thus. So it is important to understand the nature and function of afflictions. So when we look at the basic function and nature of afflictions, and then the moment the afflictions arise, any kind of affliction arise within our mind stream, it disturbs the natural calm and peace of the mind. So this is the first difficulty, the initial difficulty in recognizing the afflictions for what they are and its negative consequences. Then the second difficulty is in the middle, the difficulty of averting them, the difficulty of overcoming them, avoiding them. And then in the end, it is extremely difficult to totally abandon these afflictions, to totally exterminate these afflictions from their roots. So, moving on, the instruction reads, acquire the three main provisions. Now, the three main provisions herein refers to some sort of prerequisite condition that someone who trains in the mind training instructions must cultivate. So the first of these three main provisions is depending on a well-qualified spiritual teacher. And it is extremely important to depend on an excellent or a well-qualified spiritual teacher. And this is important because an excellent spiritual teacher or a well-qualified spiritual teacher can help us to engage in our study and practice effectively, and then can guide us through our practice, and then can help us to recognize the afflictions that dominate our behaviors and attitude, and help us to abandon them. Then the second main provision is that not only must you depend on a well-qualified spiritual teacher, you yourself must have that willingness to follow the teachings, must have conviction in the teachings, as well as an aspiration to effectively inculcate these practices in your daily lives. Then the third provision is that you must cultivate all the other necessary conditions, conducive conditions for your spiritual practice, and overcome obstacles and challenges. So, when you examine whether you yourself have all these three provisions, and if it is the case that these three are complete, then one needs to rejoice and make the aspiration that others might also similarly gain all such three provisions. And if you begin to notice that there are many others who do not have these three main provisions, then it is also important to make the aspiration that they also gain these three main provisions. Then moving on, the instruction reads, cultivate the three that must not decline. So the first of these three that must not decline is devotion to the spiritual teachers, to the spiritual teacher that you have taken on for yourself. And devotion herein refers to faith and appreciation. And this faith and appreciation must be unwavering in your spiritual teacher. So, without faith, respect, and appreciation of your spiritual teacher, then it is very difficult for you to effectively follow their teachings, follow their advices. So, as such, it is difficult for your spiritual practice to become effective. Then the second thing that must not decline is one must also have an unwavering enthusiasm in your practice, because if you lose enthusiasm, if you lose joy in your practice, then it is no longer sustainable and effective. And the last of these is that the sacred commitments of mind training must not decline. So then, moving on, keep the three from which you must not separate. Now, the three herein refers to the three doors of body, speech, and mind. And more particularly, it is referring to the fact that you have to ensure that your body, speech, and mind should never deviate from virtue. So herein, when it says keep the three from which you must not separate, it is important to understand that when we are talking about the three doors, it is important to develop an ethical restraint in not engaging in any negative form of action, speech, or thought. And as such, in its place, one should always strive to cultivate positive thought, virtuous actions, virtuous speech. So, moving on, apply the training impartially to all. Now, this refers to the fact, as we already discussed before, that our spiritual practice should not come at our own convenience and should not be self-serving. That our spiritual practice should not be contingent upon on a person or on time, that at all times, with all people who we come into contact with, we should be able to cultivate our spiritual practice. So what it in effect is advising us to do is to overcome that conception of nearness and farness we have, wherein we are attached to some people and we are averse to some people. So as such, our spiritual practice should not be informed by that kind of attitude at all, that we should be able to cultivate our spiritual practice in our interaction with all people. And then similarly, we also only want to cultivate spiritual practice at a time that is convenient for us. And this attitude must be overcome, that we should be willing to practice our spirituality at all given times. So the next line is connected to the same instruction. So if it makes more sense when we read it together. Apply the training impartially to all. It is vital that it be deep and all-pervasive. So deep herein refers to that it should not be the case that we only assume the appearance of cultivating a spiritual practice or assume the appearance of helping others. Deep herein refers to the fact that not only deep herein refers to the fact that all our spiritual practice as well as all the beneficial actions that we engage in should be informed by a deep conviction and a true aspiration. Lassa. Then, moving on, meditate constantly on those who've been set apart. So herein, the ones who've been set apart refers to the ones that we are normally averse towards, those who we look to as our perceived enemies, those who have harmed us, and so forth. So, in spiritual terms, a practitioner uses this term, those who've been set apart, to refer to the people who we find most difficult to show compassion towards, people who we find most difficult to practice love and compassion towards. And we can appreciate this more when we look at the manner in which, when we think about practicing forbearance, then we find it most difficult to practice forbearance with our perceived enemies, or more particularly with people whom we have helped and they do not reciprocate, or they do not reciprocate in a similar manner. So when the instruction reads, meditate constantly on those who've been set apart, it is effectively instructing us to look at the manner in which we find it very difficult to practice forbearance, as an example, to those who have harmed us, to those who we perceive to be our enemies, or to those with those who we compare ourselves and compete with. As opposed to this, we find it convenient to practice tolerance, be forbearing with our loved ones, dear ones. So as such, the instruction says, cultivate special compassion. In your meditation, take these as a special focus of your meditation. Those whom you find most difficult to be tolerant towards, whom you find most difficult to practice compassion and love with. Then moving on, the 12th precept instructs us, don't be dependent on external conditions. So herein, when it says, don't be dependent on external conditions. It is referring to the fact that it is totally wrong to assume the attitude that you will practice you will practice only when you yourself are happy, you yourself are not disturbed, and come a moment when you yourself are at unease, when you yourself are a little bit disturbed, then you don't want to practice spirituality anymore. That's not the kind of attitude one should assume. So herein, what it is effectively instructing us to do is not to become complacent. It is indeed the case that in times of struggle, in times of setbacks, challenges, then we do remember our spiritual practice. But when we are able to overcome these challenging times, then we become complacent and forget about our spiritual practice. Then the 13th precept advises us, this time practice what's most important. So herein, when it says this time, it refers to this very life. Then practice what's most important. Most important herein refers to overcoming that self-cherishing attitude, to be able to accommodate others' concerns, others' welfare. And more importantly, with regards to our spiritual practice, rather than always talking about spiritual practice, it is more important to actually practice it. So, in short, it is advising us to take a hard look at the manner in which we are ready to preach at all times, but we are not ready to practice what we preach. Now, 14th, don't misunderstand. So herein, there are 6 forms of such misunderstanding that can arise in our spiritual practice. Then this kind of misunderstanding, there are 6, and the first of these is misplaced patience, misplaced forbearance. So, when we are talking about forbearance, if one wants to cultivate a genuine spiritual practice, it should be the case that one is able to take on all the challenges that you face in your spiritual path. It should be the case that you are tolerant, you are able to address all the challengings, all the setbacks that you face in your spiritual path. Now, as opposed to this, we bear through any kind of difficulties that we face in our worldly pursuit, wherein if we develop a harmful intent, we want to see this intent through at any given cost, as opposed to not tolerating it at all. We are willing to tolerate any kind of challenges we might face in seeing this kind of harmful intent through, to follow it through in our actions. So this is the kind of misplaced patience, misplaced tolerance. So the second of these six misunderstandings is misplaced intention. Now, misplaced intention herein refers to in actuality, it should be the case that we have pure interest in Dharma and its practice, and but the normal manner in which we approach our lives is to have a complete interest in our worldly pursuits, such as becoming totally attached to our close ones, and such as becoming totally averse to our perceived enemies. And in this way, we do whatever it is necessary to protect those who we consider our close ones, and to hurt those who we perceive to be our animals. This consumes this is the kind of interest that we develop in our lives. So as such, this is a misplaced intention. Then the third of this misunderstanding is misplaced relish. Now, relish herein referring to misplaced sense of joy. So actually, it should be the case that we derive a true sense of joy in study, contemplation, and practice of the Dharma. But as opposed to this, we begin to derive a sense of joy in the worldly pleasures. So this is a misplaced sense of joy. So then the fourth form of misunderstanding in spiritual practice is misplaced compassion. So herein it is important to understand that true compassion is aimed towards the suffering that others are experiencing. So as such, true compassion comes from appreciating the suffering that someone else is undergoing, appreciating the trial, the unsatisfactory nature of samsara itself. And when you begin to see someone who is engaging in harmful action, then it is important, that is the moment when we should feel compassion. Understanding the fact that due to them engaging in such harmful actions, negative actions, they are accumulating negative karma, which will bring suffering for them in the future. So this is true compassion, compassion that is aimed towards the suffering of others. Now, as opposed to that, if they are practitioners who are enduring challenges, hardships for the sake of their dharma practice, then we do not really need to feel compassion for them. They are willingly taking it upon themselves, and they are engaging in a virtuous action. Yes. So the fifth form of misunderstanding is misplaced pursuit or misplaced encouragement. So ideally, it should be the case that we are able to encourage those who want to pursue the Dharma, to help them to pursue the Dharma, to help them to overcome the challenges that they face in effectively pursuing a spiritual practice. Now, as opposed to that, we do not encourage and help people who want to pursue the Dharma. We are more busy or more involved in encouraging people who want to pursue worldly things, the glories, prosperities of this world, helping them to harm common enemy and so forth. Then the sixth of this misunderstanding in the cultivation of a spiritual practice is misplaced rejoicement or misplaced appreciation. So ideally, it is the case that we should be able to take joy, rejoice, and appreciate those those who are engaging in virtuous activity, those who are cultivating a spiritual practice, but the manner in which we rejoice in our lives is when others begin to suffer, we seem to derive a sense of joy. We seem to derive a sense of joy from such circumstances. So that's a form of misplaced rejoicement or misplaced joy. Now moving on with the root text itself, the 15th precept advises us, don't be inconsistent. So your spiritual practice should not be cultivated at your own convenience, should not be self-serving, and should not be interrupted by that kind of concern. It should be consistent. So now the 16th precept advises us to train wholeheartedly, now to dedicate all our efforts, all our time to our spiritual practice. So herein, wholeheartedly, more particularly, refers to not having kind of any reservation, any kind of hesitation, any kind of doubt or suspicion, but to train in these instructions wholeheartedly. Now, the 17th precept advises us to gain freedom through discernment and analysis. So, herein, when it says gain freedom through discernment and analysis, freedom refers to becoming free from the afflictions. And through constant analysis, through being discerning, through contemplation, one can effectively become free from the afflictions. So herein, it is important not to become complacent in our practice with regards to overcoming the afflictions. It might be the case that when you yourself at times calm, then you begin to get the impression that maybe I have overcome my afflictions. And then it is important at that time to be very discerning and to contemplate carefully. Because at a moment when you yourself are calm, it is only the case that the right conditions and causes for the afflictions to arise is not present at that moment. And if you come into the right conditions and causes for the afflictions to arise, then the afflictions could arise at any given moment. So as such, it is important to always look at our mental state in this manner with discernment and contemplating in this manner. Then moving on, the precepts of mind training advises us, don't be boastful. So when it advises us don't be boastful, then boasting about something that you have done is in effect asking for attention, asking for validation. So as such, there is a sense of expectation. So if you have helped someone, if you have helped a number of people, it is important not to boast about it, not to make a show out of it, not to tell other people that you have helped this person or these people, and to expect some sort of recognition for yourself, to expect some sort of your action being validated, your spiritual practice being validated. This is what the instruction means. Don't be boastful. That all your virtuous actions, your spiritual practice, must be informed by a pure motivation to help others, not tainted by concerns of expectation, recognition, and validation from others. Thus. Then moving on, the precept advises us don't be irritable. So when it advises us don't be irritable, then it is advising us through training in these instruction, one should come to a place wherein one does not have an immediate reaction to situations, to perceived slight, slander, and so forth. So don't be irritable. Learn not to have an immediate, mindless reaction to situations. Then the 20th precept advises us don't be temperamental. So herein, when it says don't be temperamental, then it is advising us to overcome that tendency that we have of immediately becoming joyful, immediately becoming sad or depressed at the slightest of inconvenience. Yes. Then the 21st precept advises us don't seek acknowledgement. So this is somewhat similar to the instructions about not being boastful. So herein there is a slight difference, wherein when we are talking about not being boastful, then being boasting in itself is an expression that wants to seek attention, and this seeking of attention ineffectively comes with that intention to seek something in return for something that you did for someone else. And that's why you are calling for attention in the first place. Now, when we are talking about not seeking acknowledgement, then it more particularly relates to seeking a sense of being validated, seeking a sense of recognition. So with this, we conclude a short discussion on the 21 precepts of mind training. Jigir. So then what follows is a colophon. Now in this colophon, Geshe, the author of this text, begins to share his own experience of training in these instructions in a very short, concise manner. Yes. Okay, so we break for tea and gather again in half an hour.